And I will be brief. Some people don't believe, I'm a recovering lawyer. But I have known Mr. Freeman for a long time, but until a few years ago, I had no idea of who he really was and what he had done. He's a native of Lowndes County. He attended Mississippi State University, worked for the USDA for many years, retired, grows unbelievably good tomatoes. But 75 years ago,
That's dark, Mr. B.
yep, not mine. Anyway, 75 years ago, he was preparing for the greatest adventure. Mr. Freeman is a member of Easy Company, the Easy Company of a band of brothers. And they parachuted in before D-Day into Normandy. They parachuted in Market Garden, if you've ever seen the movie A Bridge Too Far. They were at Foy outside Bastogne, holding the line. They ended up at Hitler's Eagle's Nest and within part of a major television miniseries. Not much more than I need to say other than it's an honor for me to introduce Mr. Bradford. About. Just you telling some of the stories that you think would be of interest.
Because they're all good.
Okay.
Well, I was born in Aliceville County in Mississippi, and on September the 4th, 1924. And I went to school at RT, and we was farming and dairy, and I had a good family. There was 8 of children, mother and dad, and we rented land. And so then whenever I got old enough, whenever I was 18, I was in college at Mississippi State. And they told me that I had to register. So whenever we talked that over about that, and they said that if I would stay, they would let me finish my year of school, and they did. And so I volunteered on December the 12th. They swore me in, and I was 18. So, and I went on and went to Camp Shelby, and I wore a 6 shoe. They didn't have a 6, so I wore my Sunday shoes to Fort McClellan, Alabama. And so finally they got me a pair of 6 shoes. And I finished 13 weeks of that. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and joined the paratroops. And I went through that in November. And in November, I was on my 5th plane, and it was the first night jump, and it was only two planes that jumped, and one had crashed and killed 19 people. And so they said they gave me a 14-day travel time to North Carolina. And I had to be there Thanksgiving Day. I always said I didn't get to stay at home and eat the turkey. But I got there, and whenever I finished, I traveled there, and we went to thing, and the 11th Airborne was up there, and I had a brother in it, so he was officer and I was private, so we didn't get to go together. And I wanted to go with the 11th, but they sent me to the 101st, and I entered foreign service on February the 5th of 1943. And so it was about, I don't know, 13, 14 days on the boat going over. And I went to the 101st. And I met Mr. Winters. He was the first lieutenant, and we got to be pretty good. I made corporal when I was in the 152nd. And whenever I got to there, they demoted me to a PFC. And I kept that the rest of the time. But I got in there, and I was in the mortar squad. So I wasn't one of the first that was doing the big fighting. But whatever they wanted from a mortar, they got it. It was 6 of us together. So they claimed that afterwards that I was a gunner. I didn't know what, all of us could do the same thing. There wasn't no difference in it. Well, one could do and one could do. So we jumped. We were supposed to jump on June the 5th, but it was raining. So Jim Eisenhower said we would just put it off. So the next day he told us we was going. So that night, June the 6th, we loaded up and left out at midnight, and we jumped in the night. So that was, and we, the outfit, they got the regular army together. I mean, they got it, and so they didn't, they got the folks on the shore that was supposed to come ashore. So it was all right, and so, and that was on five different places where they were supposed to be bringing people to ashore. But our place was, I forgot what his name is, but anyway, we managed to get them to ashore, and so they went a fighting, and then we didn't do too much, but we just had them got them on shore, and turned it over to them, the regular army. And whenever we got that over with, we worked a while, and then General Eisenhower said he wanted he wanted character of France, so he called on us to get it, and we managed to get it, And he wanted at Peninsula, it was down there, and they said they had a place to unload and they could do better with the unloading at port. And so he said we gave that to him. And then so we fought a little while longer, and then we went back to England and stayed a while there because, and on September the 17th, we jumped in Holland. And we stayed in Holland 78 days. We was fighting on the decks, what was they called, and in just different places. And we was on a dike and one stuff and nothing, and just up and down, and wasn't doing much. So then we went and went to, we went into France, back into France in one of the old bases, French bases. And they gave us a pass to Paris, but 5 days. But one day saved us bank because I was a country boy. I didn't like town. So I went and came back. I told them I did go to see the Leaning Tower. And they asked me, what about it? I told them I saw a mini post leaning that the cows pushed over. I come back. And, so I got that on with me. And come back, and we were just hanging around there. And first thing you know, they're hollering for us to get ready and go, and they loaded us on trucks. We called it our truck job. We went up to Bastogne, and we stayed there. Well, we was relieved, and then they told us we dug enough of snow back so it wouldn't melt on our clothes. We got to the dirt earth, and it wouldn't do. So that was the coldest for a Mississippi boy had ever seen. And so we stayed there, and they relieved us, and then called us back before we got to sleep to go. And we started back, and I got shot in my right leg. So that I was out for a while, went back in Germany, in Bastogne. Went back on up to, and I went back to England, and they fixed my leg, so I had to go back. And I went back and got with the rest of the boys, and we finished up, and I was up there, and went up. Part of them was in Hitler's home up there in the mountains, and I was in, let me see, I can't think of a little town, a little country there, and so whenever they retired, and so we was called. After they were retired, or we were retired, and they decided we were going to jump in Japan with the 11th Airborne. But Brother Jimmy Doolittle and one of my buddies, Colonel Cole, I knew him well. We got together a lot after the war, in different places, so, and I guess everybody knew he died yesterday, the day before. So that, then, so we didn't have to go to Japan, and then we got to come home, and I got home on December the 2nd. I didn't even know where my mother and dad was. I just kept writing them, and they forwarded the mail already. But they had moved. So my brother had finished. He was at Camp Shelby. I reckon we called it Shelbytown. So he was there for 4 years, and he had just gotten out whenever the Japs done their do over there. And so he was in Meridian, and I knew where he lived, and I went and got him. He carried me on home, and so and that was it. So after that, I started farming, and what I had saved in the Army, I lost that, so I got me a good job for carrying the mail. That's what I done. Carried the mail for 32 years. And that was the end of my doing. Been retired. Me and my brother was already, when we was in school, we had a little paper. I forgot what to call it, but it's something about, it come once a week, just one time a week. And so the Russians and the Germany had paratroopers, and so me and my brother decided we wanted to be paratroopers. So we was always at the barn or somewhere, and we were jumping out of the barn loft. Sometimes we'd losing our cap, but we managed. We're about 8 foot. We jumped out of the barn loft. So somebody, we didn't know who, didn't want to find out, because they came to see my dad and mother, and they had the umbrella. Our walk was about 25 or 30 yards from the gate. And so they came and put prop and didn't close it up. So me and my brother was just decided that thing would be just right for the jump with both of us. Well, that didn't work. Whenever we jumped with both of us, it went up. We hid the thing, we put it back, and headed to the woods. And that was the end of it.
One of my favorites. We were talking one time about Operation Market Garden and the British who were going to the rescue at Arnhem, stopping for tea, and you were telling me about that.
Yeah, we went to, I can't think town now. Anyway, we went and got to town, and our objective was to capture the bridge. And so we went and got there, had it on September 17th when we went, and and we captured the bridge, and we was under General Montgomery at that time. They shifted us off to, and he was the British. And there was a British fellow come up on one of them big, about 8-wheel things, and he got out and it was at the bridge, and he didn't cross the bridge. I asked him what he stopped there for, and he said, a spotted tea, old bloke. That was the end of him. And the bridge, and the Germans came down, we left. And the Germans came down and blowed the bridge. And we had to turn around and come back and help them get it across, a bridge. They had to use our jeeps and stuff to get it across, to pull the bridge across the bridge again. So we got that over with, and then we left out, and we finally got back to France. And that's about it.
And Danny Coggins went with Mr. Freeman on a World War II tour across Europe. And he has some stories I think y'all need to hear about what transpired on that.
I met Mr. Freeman through our son, who was also in the 101st. And we had the opportunity to travel across Europe with Mr. Freeman. And I want to tell you what kind of guy Mr. Freeman is. We're at Heathrow. We've been in the airplane all night. It's time to go and we cannot find Mr. Freeman. We panic. We go out in all directions to try to find him. We don't know where he's going. Probably to Italy to see the Leaning Tower again. And I ran out to the other side of the bus, and there Mr. Freeman is loading suitcases onto the bus. And I said, "What are you doing, Mr. B?" And he said, "I'm ready to go. We can't go till everybody gets on this bus, grab a bag." So the trip started off, it was really pretty good. And then we stopped at one of the military cemeteries, and as you can imagine, that's a very somber occasion, especially if you know the people like Mr. B did. Well, the girl who ran the museum said, "You have to ride in a wheelchair." And he said, "I don't want that." And she said, "But you have to." And he said, "I don't want that." And she said, "Please sit down, you have to." So Mr. B sits in the wheelchair, they're starting to push him around. After about 10 minutes, she stops. And he said, "Well, why are we stopping? We're going way over there." And she says, "I'm tired, I'm worn out." So he stood up and said, "Sit down." And pushed her around the cemetery. Now, the last story I'll tell was we stopped at the forest near Noville and Foy, where the Screaming Mimis got Mr. Freeman. He's very lucky. But the bus driver gets off, the guide goes over here, and he's talking. Mr. Freeman starts walking over here. Well, I start following Mr. Freeman, so does everybody else, and poor old guy says, "Where y'all going?" And I said, "We're following him." Mr. Freeman walked 1.5 miles through the woods to his foxhole. Wow. His foxhole. Now, there's foxholes all through the woods. How do you know this is his foxhole? He said, "It's simple, I'm a mortar man. I can see Noville over there, I can see Foy over there, and I made my foxhole twice as big to hold the mortar." So the poor guy gave up trying to say anything. And we were very lucky through some people that we met. The commanding general of the 101st Airborne sent his flag that had flown over his compound in Afghanistan. And they got down in the foxhole, and it's a great picture. We got a picture of Steve Wallace, who's not here tonight, our son who was in the 101st and Mr. Freeman, and we sent that back. And the boys, you know, with the 101st just absolutely love that. Mr. Freeman goes back to the 101st Airborne in Fort Campbell quite often. We meet them in other places. He was looking at the mortars to see how they had changed, and in fact, they've gotten a little better, he said. And so one of the guys asked him, what do you think about all them new Army vehicles there? And it's like he hugged this thing like he was hugging a baby, and he says, when you got one of these, everything else is just a target. With that, Rufus, I'll give it back to you.
Mr. Freeman said that he would be willing to take a few questions.
Mr. Freeman, what were your thoughts after the Band of Brothers movie came out? Talking with, thinking about Major Winters and all those guys that were in your company?
Well, they were all good folks, and Mr. Winters was a real good fellow. He was a leader. He didn't say, you do this. He led you. He'd say, let's see about doing it this way. No problem. Everybody liked him and followed him.
He's quite a character.
And done what they had to do.
Thank you.
I have a question on, was it one of his paratroopers that got caught in 101 Division, got caught on the steeple of a church?
Yes, sir.
Was that true?
Yes, sir. And if you go over there now, you'll still see a dummy hanging up there with that parachute.
Wonderful.
Did you go up in the Eagle's Nest?
Yes.
He lived through it too. He watched the whole thing unfold.
No, he got killed.
He did?
He did. They shot him.
The movie.
Dropped his blood right there.
The movie didn't show that. How about the Eagle's Nest? Did you go up in the Eagle's Nest?
Yes, sir.
I've been there. That's
2
something,
times.
that's something to see, isn't it?
They appointed me from down at the New Orleans to be to go with them. I went back 2 times this last year. So,
It's quite a sight.
Mr. Freeman, one other story you had told me was about the jelly factory at Fort.
oh, oh, that just tickled the people that whenever I was telling them about a place that was fighting, Mr. Winters went and he just took a few men, and went. That was his way of doing, and so they went up and they were fighting at the crossroads, they said. So we was all back, and whenever we went up there, they asked me about what went on at the crossroads. I told them I wasn't there, and they wanted to know where I was, and I told them jelly factory. It was a big jelly factory down, and we didn't know whether the Germans were eating it on from one side and we from the other. We was getting jelly.
Is anything about the clickers? Ask him.
The crickets.
The crickets.
The crickets.
Oh, yes, sir.
That was a signal that,
Yes, that was at nighttime.
oh,
They-
I got you.
You know somebody was there.
Well, I brought him one for my first trip over there, and I gave it to him, and he looked at it and studied it, and I said, what are you gonna do with that? He said, take it home, put it next to the one the Army gave me.
The first time I asked him about that, he said, oh, this, and reached up on his mountain and had some keys attached to it, and said, yeah, I still have mine.
So it very much worked. Mr. Freeman, the clicker worked. It worked, the clicker helped.
Huh?
Did y'all ever use them? Did they work?
Oh, yeah. They worked that night.
When you jumped, did you carry your mortar with you, Mr. Freeman?
I had the base plate.
Base plate? Okay.
And Malarkey, I know if you read the book or anything, he was mentioned a lot of times. He was my sergeant.
What was the name again?
Huh?
Who?
Donald Malarkey.
Oh, yeah, Malarkey, okay, yeah, okay.
So me and him was good buddies. And he could tell me where to put him.
Okay.
And he was a forward observer for the mortar. And so that's what he had a little ruler and a map, so he could tell us how many increments to put on one and where to drop.
Right.
Well, we wasn't used very much. We moved too fast. And all the time, whenever they knew we didn't have a way out, so after we got there, so they would wave the white flag and want to surrender. And they'd tell us, you know you surrendered. But the one would tell them, says, we knew that when we come from up there. We didn't have a way out.
How old are you, sir? How old are you?
94.
How do you remember all those dates?
Ma'am,
Tell me, how do you remember all of those dates?
How do you remember the dates?
no problem.
Yes,
You'll never forget them.
How many night jumps did you take in the darkness? And how did they train you to be able to stop? I'm trying to think about, how you would not be able to see. How were you trained to be able to, on a night jump?
Well, we jumped at night. The British kept us hid part of the time. General Eisenhower kept us hid part of the time. They didn't want to know where we were at. And we didn't know where we were at.
As you're coming down so fast to the ground, can you see anything? Can you get a feel for how far you are, or are you just slamming the brakes on at the last second?
No, sir. You can see that way.
Okay.
You could see coming down, and another thing, you could lay down and see what's going on up around. You get flat on the ground, you could see somebody moving through there.
Okay.
Mhm. But you standing up, you couldn't see him.
What was your nickname?
Caledonia. That makes your head so hard.
How much did the mortar base plate weigh when you jumped?
18 pounds.
Well, that was added to all the weight you already carried.
I had that mortar, and he had it had two sights. He had one and I had one. He was, so whenever we he'd tell us what it was, and then he'd tell how many yards it was, and we put, the pins had it, between it, you had it, and they called them increments, it was extra powder. And you just put that in there, and however many yards you were gonna fire.
How much equipment did y'all have to jump with?
I didn't know. Well, we just had whatever we had to go.
Sir,
All the stuff we had.
did you have any interaction with POW, German POWs, and actually talk to them?
Give me that.
Did you have any interaction with the German POWs?
Oh, a lot of times.
Really?
Uh,
Could they speak English, son?
most of them talk English. A little bit you could understand them. Well, some wouldn't. And, they couldn't understand me what I had time.
Now, Malarkey met a German that he'd been in college with, didn't he?
Yeah, they went to school together. The first 5 prisoners that was captured that night, this was before they got into their guns. One of them had went to school with Malarkey in Seattle, Washington.
I have a question. On these night jumps, what altitude was the plane flying when you jumped?
Sir,
What altitude was the plane flying when you jumped at night?
15, that'd be pretty different, about 25. But that night, they didn't cut the engine or nothing, they just said, cool. And we went out.
Mr. Joe was a pilot.
How high was it on that D-Day? How high were you?
Well, it was just like that. It wasn't like it does whenever it's daytime, you know, you have a time to look around, but that night, you just hit the ground.
Did they tell you what altitude you were jumping from that night?
See, we went through a cloud, and the planes scattered. They couldn't see the lights on the other. Three planes, one in front, 2 sides. They couldn't see the lights. So they, whenever went through the cloud, and of course, being was raised in go to church part of the time, and thought old Moses leading the children.
Mr. Brad, how far were y'all away from where you were supposed to land when you finally landed?
Never did know.
Amen to that.
But they told that said wouldn't none of us been there if we'd have hit the DC. Because they had it, they already know where we was coming and when. So, except that whenever he put it off one night, they didn't know the next day we was coming. They said the general that was supposed to be down there, he went home that night. And so, they tell that anyway.
His wife's
Were you involved in the action when they took out those howitzers that were going to shell Utah Beach? Were you involved in that action down through that trench when y'all took out those 3 howitzers?
Whenever we got, it was 4.
4? Okay.
Yes, 4, not, it was 13 men that got, and women, got there, done all that. Well, the rest of us was guarding the road and didn't let nobody go down.
Okay.
And they didn't go down them either.
I understand.
Early, you had been asked earlier about German POWs, and when we were talking about Market Garden, you mentioned the Germans that were captured on the dikes there.
Yeah. Well, I was the mortar squad. I was down in the swamp, and we were down just below the jelly factory. And we were down in the woods and scattered, and of course we'd see one another, knew where one another was. And so there was 6 or 7 came walking up through there with 2 dogs. So the dogs was looking at me. Well, I didn't point it at the Germans, but I stopped them. I told them I'll kill them. And I didn't even know what I said. They stopped. And so we got there. Malarkey said, what we gonna do with them? I said, we're gonna take them up yonder and let them go. And he said, well, they kill us going across there. I said, no, they won't either, because if they do, they'll be killing their own folks. So I said, I'm gonna be in there with them. I ain't gonna be out where they could be shooting at me without shooting at the Germans. And that's the way we got them back up there in a straight run. And we lost the dogs. They didn't show up.
I don't know why.
I got a question. Mr. Freeman, how much ammunition did y'all have for your borders? I mean, how did you get did y'all carry it with you on your person, the mortars?
The ammunition for the mortars.
We carried 3, I had 3 rounds, and the boys, the rest of the boys that were there, that was, it's 6 of them. And I had 3 with rounds with me, and the base plate. And Malarkey had the bipods and the tube. And so we of course, whenever we got together, so it worked out that, and the other boy had 3 apiece, 3 behind, 3 in front. They had 6, and each one of those had that. And that's the way we had it. And of course, whenever when we went to Bastogne, they couldn't supply us with nothing for 5 days. And then whenever they did, the planes, we had our stuff, our panels out. See, somebody was giving up and didn't know who it was, and I don't want to know, because that was a bad thing. And so we was there, and I don't know, they just, whenever they run a big sergeant, I reckon about as big as the man in here. And he ended up running up and down there and said, don't y'all go up there. After we got off the trucks. And little boy about this high, he was from Chicago. And no, Philadelphia. And he said, you just go where you want to, Sergeant. We come up here and stop this. He was a little bitty fellow. He wasn't as big as I was.
What size were the mortars, 60s or 80s, or what were they?
60.
60s.
Oh, that 80, they had to have something with them, but that was a good weapon.
Yeah, I heard it was.
Mr. Brad, when y'all were in England training, what did y'all think of the Brits, and what did the Brits think of you?
They did what?
In England, what did y'all think of the British people and what did they think of you?
I don't know, they didn't say too much. We never was around them too much. We kept moving, first one place and another. They hid us every once in a while,
In the jelly factory.
but 2 weeks, 2 or 3. Couldn't get no mail, send none out, nothing.
Did you ever meet Patton?
Sir,
Did you ever meet General Patton?
no. I went to his funeral, to his grave.
You did?
Now, you did meet Prince Charles.
Oh, yeah. He was a character. I wake up at night and laugh about him.
Prince Charles.
Oh.
Yeah, Prince Charles. We went to see him and, he was a paratrooper in Vietnam. See, and, that's the reason why I was over there, he wanted to talk to some, we told him he wanted to talk to some real paratroopers. And, so he was telling about one, he says that they slipped out the back of a helicopter. And so they didn't jump out of a plane, they slipped out the back, he said. And whenever he told me about slipping out, well, he shook just like that. He said it was over water too.
When we were, my son called me and said they have a thing called Gathering of the Eagles. They want to bring in all veterans. Dad, would you bring up Mr. Freeman and Mr. Wallace? And I said, sure. So to make sure we didn't have to go through long lines and all that stuff at security, I called the 101st Airborne protocol officer. And he gave me 100 reasons why I should have called earlier and all that. And I said, now look, I said, I'm as nice a guy as you'll meet till I run into a wall, and no wall will stop me yet. I said, get on your computer. Somebody from the 101st is going to tell me you're going to bring him in without all that nonsense. And I'd like it to be you. Before you say no one more time, get on your computer and Google Bradford Freeman and see what comes up. Hit images. And you hear this guy, he said, oh. And I said, is he standing there shaking hands with Prince Charles? He said, bring him on. We got him in without all that.
That's great, that's great.
Well, I'll just tell you for sure, you couldn't push me out of a plane. My hats are off too.
What did they ever do with Captain Sobel?
They made him a trainee. He was over there. See, well, a lot of the boys would join the paratroops after they was overseas, and he was the head of the school. So they told me. So I don't know.
What a story.
Mr. Brad, how many jumps did you have to make before you got your wings?
5.
5?
Had to pack your chute on doing. That separated a lot of them.
How many jumps did you make all told?
Huh?
How many jumps did you make all told?
I couldn't tell you. We jumped in North Carolina after I got my wings. We just kept jumping in North Carolina. Because they knowed we was going to send us somewhere else and we'd have as many jumps as they made. And that's the way it happened. And then we jumped plenty of times in England.
We have enjoyed talking, and we'll let Mr. Freeman rest his voice, and we saw some food over there.
Thank you.